everyone, welcome back. My name is Madi Kay, this is my big chair, and today we're talking about my top 24 best reads of 2024. But with a little extra twist added in, today I'm giving myself the extra challenge of only talking about each of these books for 1 minute and 1 minute only. And the reason why I'm doing this is just to give myself a fun challenge. But without this challenge, this video would be essentially like 2 hours long. I'll be starting this list from my most favorite read of 2024 all the way down to my least favorite book of the year, if that makes any sense, just so that way you have some context going into this video. I know you guys probably can't see it, but I'm starting my timer right now, and let's go ahead and get started with my favorite book of the year, and that is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I can never pronounce her name correctly. It's French, so it's tough for me. So this book is actually about our heroine, who is nameless this entire book, and she meets this super rich guy named Maxime, and he falls in love with her and he marries her like super quick, takes her back to his huge mansion where she essentially is living in the shadow of his late wife Rebecca, who mysteriously disappeared out in sea one day, and no one really knows what happens to her. It's this giant mystery in the whole town. And as their marriage progresses, she realizes that she's really out of her element, like a fish out of water kind of trope. And the female butler of the house is just really making her life miserable. She really liked Rebecca, the Maxime's first wife. So she is just trying to, oh my gosh, that was crazy. That was no time at all. Oh my goodness, that was super fast. Oh boy. Okay, so that was a test, and I feel like I failed because I feel like I only talked about half of what I wanted to talk about with Rebecca. But now that we know how quick it is, I will keep that in mind going forward. All right, starting the timer again. My second favorite book of the year is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. So fun fact, I started reading this book back in 2022. I didn't pick it up again until last year, and I'm really happy I did because this proved to be one of my favorite vampire novels of all time. I'm not a huge Twilight fan, but I definitely feel like this is Twilight for adults. And this book follows a witch named, oh gosh, oh no, I forgot her name. Oh, Diana Bishop. Wow, that was scary. So this book follows Diana Bishop, who is a professor at Oxford who is studying the history of alchemy, and she finds this magical manuscript in the library while she's doing research for her thesis, I believe. And she meets this elusive, illustrious vampire who is also looking for the manuscript. And basically this manuscript puts a target on her back, but it's supposed to be a magical book that talks about the origin of witches, vampires. Wow, I'm really bad at this. I wasn't able to get to my review, but I feel like you guys got a pretty good idea of what that book is about. I wish I could talk about why I like those two books, but I can't because I spent too much time on the summary. Hopefully I won't make that same mistake again. All right, next up on our list, we have The Tales of Despero by Kate DiCamillo. And fun fact about this book, I actually read this with my class last year, so that's the reason why I wanted to pick this up and read it myself. And I have to say, this is probably one of the best children's books I've ever read. So this book is about the titular mouse Despero, who has big ears and even bigger dreams, and he falls in love with a princess, and he's very curious about the human world. And then one day the princess is kidnapped and he tries to go rescue her. I really like this book a lot because it has multiple POVs, so it breaks it up into 4 different parts, and each different part you follow a different character. And this book does a really good job of talking about things like empathy, forgiveness, the light versus the darkness, what it's like to strike out against societal expectations and norms. It's a really good book because it teaches a lot of really good lessons for students and kids. So if you have, oh my gosh, okay. I feel like I did a little bit better that time. I feel like I not only talked about the book, but I also talked about why I liked it. I feel a little bit better about that one. All right, starting the timer again. Next up on our list, we have Notes of an Execution by Danya Kafka. And this book follows a serial killer. I believe his name is Ansel. Yeah, Ansel. Okay, I got that right. So Ansel is a serial killer who is living out his final day on death row. And this is following him and talking about his past as a serial killer and taking a more reflective look into the lives of the women who most affected him. So like his mother, the girl that grew up with him in foster care that turned into the detective that eventually did arrest him, and then the twin sister of his late wife. I thought this was really interesting because this book really delved in to like what basically makes a serial killer and immortals the lives of the victims' loss and these women who had promising futures ahead of them and families who loved them and whose light were snuffed out way too early by a man. Oh, all right. Okay, that one wasn't so bad that time. All right, starting the timer again. Next up on our list, we have The Watchmen by Alan Moore, and this is my first and only graphic novel on the 5-star ratings list. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, Watchmen is about this alternate universe in which we won the Vietnam War, Nixon is still the president, and these costumed heroes are basically being assassinated left and right, and Rorschach, who is one of them, is trying to solve the mystery of who's killing all these costumed heroes. And at the same time, we have this huge political divide. The world is on the precipice of World War III, and it's a really interesting look into not only politics, but this idea of the needs of the few, or the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and the sacrifices people will go through in order to avoid mass extinction. And there were a couple differences from the movie, and fun fact, I actually did like the movie. I feel like I'm one of the only people who liked... Oh, okay. Hopefully you guys can't hear the snowplow outside. Okay, starting the timer again. Up next, we have The Age of Magical Overthinking by Amanda Montell. Now, Amanda Montell is also the co-host of the podcast Sounds Like a Cult. She also wrote a book called Cultish, which I think is actually better than this book, but I still genuinely enjoyed this book. And look how cute the cover is. Isn't that adorable? I love it. So, Age of Magical Overthinking is kind of similar to a lot of the episodes on her podcast, where they talk about stand-ums, conspiracy theories, manifesting, and the ways in which our brains as humans are wired to not only be manipulated by people who are trying to get us on their side, but also the way that we are influenced, right, by certain ideas like frequency bias, confirmation bias, self-fulfilling prophecy, you know, the kind of stuff that you learn about if you took a psychology class in high school or college. I find that stuff to be really fascinating, and I feel like Amanda Montell's voice is really palatable. I know she's a little bit of a controversial figure right now with all the drama. Oh, sorry to leave you guys in suspense about that, but yeah. Anyway, I recommend reading this or just listening to her podcast. Either way, I feel like you're going to get the same experience. Up next, we have The Book Thief by Mark Zuzak, which is a book that I'm surprised I haven't read yet up until this point, but this is a really good book that usually people read in high school, but for some reason my high school just didn't assign this one. So The Book Thief is about Liesel, this young girl who's growing up in World War II Germany, who gets adopted by this elderly couple that lives there. And now she's trying to, you know, assimilate into this town. She makes a best friend, Rudy. She starts stealing books, hence the title Book Thief. And then her parents, or her father, adoptive father at least, decides to invite this Jewish man to hide in their basement, and she befriends him. She also kind of makes this unlikely friendship with the mayor's wife at the same time, who lets her read books and everything. And I really like this book because it's also narrated by Death, which I thought was very interesting, and you get the sense that Death doesn't really take any pleasure in war. Oh, that's frustrating. I want to talk about this book way more because it's so good. But again, we have a timer, we have a challenge. I cannot do that. I have to restrict myself because, again, this would be a 2-hour long video if I didn't have this going on. So I don't have the physical copy of this book, but my next read is The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. And The Woman in Me, for those of you who don't know, is basically a memoir following Britney's rise from her humble beginnings to her child star days to her basically pop star superstardom rise into the pop icon that we know and love today. And she also talks about her relationship with Justin Timberlake and just how his entire smear campaign against her basically put her in a bad public light, and how there were so many forces at work, like the Hollywood tabloids, her family, who were just actively working against her in a really sinister way, and the conservatorship that just basically put her on a really bad path for a very long time, and just how unfair it was. Like, this girl did nothing wrong, did nothing to deserve this, and she just basically was turned into a prisoner in her own home and a dancing monkey for her very abusive family, who restricted everything she ate, who forced her... Crap. Oh well. If you haven't done so already, please read that book. So now that we finished talking about my 5-star reads of 2024, let's go in and talk about my 4.5 to 4-star reads. Okay, let's turn on the timer again. So up next, we have a book that was recommended to me by a friend, and that's Book Eaters by Sunyi Dean. This book is about a woman named Devon who is part of a species called book eaters. Now, book eaters are these humanoid figures that when they eat books, they consume it in a way where they can actually read without actually reading. So they consume the book, they understand what the book is about, which is actually a really cool, like, kind of superpower thing. They don't eat any actual human food. And Devon grows up in this very patriarchal, very strict, traditional, big family society that's basically like our world social elite, where the women are basically used as brooding mares. So you are contracted to basically get married twice and have babies for each different house. And so her first baby, she was really upset. She didn't want to leave it. She was basically kidnapped and taken away. And the second baby she gave birth to was actually a mind eater, meaning, I'm sorry, leaving in suspense, but hopefully that will make you want to read this because this is actually a really good book. And Nora, if you're watching, thank you so much for this recommendation. It was amazing. All right, next up, we have a book that I don't have a physical copy of, and that is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. Oh, I forgot to set my timer. Whoops, sorry. Okay, so Everything I Know About Love is another memoir book in which Dolly Alderton talks about like her early days as a high school student living in London and just growing up, partying, having fun with her friends, going on crazy like weekend bingers, is that the word for it? Weekend like drinking binges, and where she just hops from party to party, which is insane. Just her being broke and trying to like find her way in London, and obviously trying to find love at the same time. So I really liked Dolly Alderton's writing voice. I thought it was very interesting, like the different perspectives she had, like her one friend who basically jumps from one serious relationship to the next. Like she never really casually dates. She always finds like the next next serious relationship right away, whereas Dolly, her life is full of just a bunch of up and downs, which I can really relate to back in my dating days as well. So anyway, sorry about that, I kept tripping up on my words there. Next up on our list, we have Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, a graphic novel series by Brian O'Malley. And I'm actually going to be counting the whole series into one conclusive story here because these books are super short, as you can see here, and they took me like a half hour to read, but I really liked them. I'm starting to get into that point where I really like graphic novels now. So I read this first one physically, and then I read the rest of them on Kindle, which you can actually get for Kindle Unlimited for free. And for those of you who don't know or haven't seen the movie, this book is about Scott Pilgrim, who falls for Ramona Flowers and wants to date her, but in order to do so, he has to defeat her 7 evil exes in these super fun, exaggerated fights. And even though I really did like some entries of the Scott Pilgrim graphic novel universe, there were just some scenes where I feel like it diverged way too much from the original plot or the conflict. Like there were some moments where I forgot what this entire series is about. And I feel like some of the entries, if they just took out those extra scenes, I get they're trying to make Scott and Ramona like feel more human and realistic and focus. Sorry, I'm really struggling with this, you guys. Wow. Oh my goodness. This is a good lesson for me that I really need to work on being more concise and not ramble as much when it comes to books. So, oh gosh, I'm spiraling already and we're not even halfway through. You know what I'm gonna do now? I'm actually going to say the title and the author before I start the timer so that way I have more time to actually talk about the books. Next up we have Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. And, alright, I'm starting the timer now, great. So Turtles All the Way Down follows this girl named Aza, and she is this young high school age girl who struggles with OCD, and I really liked how John Green represented her mental health state and how certain things really triggered her and what those behaviors looked like. And I feel like it also kind of triggered in me my own little OCD, because while I was reading this, I got more anxious, which just goes to show how much of a masterclass of a writer John Green is. The way that he makes you not only empathize with this character, but also make you anxious on her behalf and really feel what she's going through. Anyway, so Aza and her BFF, I think her name's Daisy, they become little detectives when the billionaire of their town goes missing, and they meet up with his son David, who is also kind of curious where he's gone, but he's also not super concerned because his dad's kind of a piece of crap. So they try to figure out where he is, and it's really interesting exploration. Okay, whatever. I feel like I said all I need to say about the book. Next up on our list, I think I have the only self-help book that actually helped me this year, and that is A Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. All right, just started the timer. And I know I'm super behind with this book because this came out like years ago and it was super popular, but I finally picked it up, and I have to say, I really did like the minimalistic aspects of this book. Marie Kondo really does a good job of talking about how decluttering our house not only helps us with our mental anxiety, but also just with order and kind of subliminal messaging that into our brain so that way we can become more productive. And I definitely agree. I feel like in my house right now, after reading that book, I just wanted to rip everything out of my closet, just go through it, and just be super organized and clean. And it really got me in that motivating mood, which I think is what self-help books are supposed to do. And I'm really excited to spring clean my house and just dump it all in my driveway and like try to sell it in like a garage sale or something. But I really did enjoy that. I also got some really good packing tips as well, and organizing tips for like my kitchen, which I think is really nice when a self-help book actually gives you real tangible advice you can apply to in your life, because that's okay. I said all I need to say. It's a good book. Definitely check it out if you don't have it. I definitely found the book to be very helpful, and I think you will too. Up next on our list, we have Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. For those of you who don't know, Taylor Jenkins Reid is an author most known for her fictional historical biopics, so like covering the stories of a fake band in Daisy Joan and the Six, a fake actress Evelyn Hugo, and in this one she covers Mick Riva, who is a character I believe in Evelyn Hugo and also Daisy Jones and the Six, so there's like a shared universe with these fake characters here. And in this one it covers like his rise to fame and the family that he left behind, 4 kids who grow up to make names of themselves. And then there's this party that they host every year during the summer, and they invite all these like Hollywood elites and just really famous people. And this particular party is like their final party, and everyone's going crazy, they're breaking stuff, they're throwing everything around, and it's just, this book covers, wow, that minute feels like it's getting shorter and shorter every single time, I swear. Up next on my favorite reads of 2024 list, we have The Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. And the timer. Alright, so this book is, I believe, one of the only romance books on this list because, I don't know, I'm just not a huge rom-com girly. I just find most of them to be extremely derivative or just basically half of it's just smut. But with this book, I feel like that really broke the mold. So this book is about the son of the US president and Prince Harry of Wales and their relationship, and how they go from being enemies to friends to lovers, and just the struggle not only being politicians, you know, in the limelight, but also just breaking certain expectations, like Prince Harry, you know, being queer or part of the LGBTQ community is really frowned upon in the royal family, and then talking about like the social expectations that they have as political figures, okay? Let me finish my thought, phone. Alright, up next we have The Measure by Nikki Erlich. So this book takes place in a world in which all of these boxes just magically appear, and it's only for people who are 22 and older, and these boxes contain a string, and the string, as people soon find out, dictates how long their life is going to live. So if you have a longer string, you're going to live a long life. If you have a short string, you're going to live a short life. And it just talks about like the pandemonium that happens afterwards, especially when humanity is gripped with this idea of mortality, and how a lot of prejudice and discrimination starts popping up because of all these short stringers, and how, okay, we shouldn't hire this person if we know they're only going to live for 5 years, and oh, I shouldn't marry you if I know you're going to die in a year. You know, like all this discrimination happening based off of who has a longer string and whatnot, and there's a lot of political corruption going on. And this book follows a lot of characters, and characters who didn't look at their box, so they don't know, people who, okay, yeah, that was a short minute for sure. It's amazing how quick the minute goes when you get really passionate or you really like a book. It goes by in like 10 seconds rather than 60. Okay, alright, up next we have Sleep Type by J.H. Markert. And starting the timer. This is a interesting horror mystery thriller book about this character, this detective named Tessa. And Tessa has a daughter who recently got kidnapped by this radicalized serial killer fan cult that essentially is loyal to Father Silence. So the day that Father Silence is killed or executed, they go and they attack and kill her father and her mother as kind of like revenge for putting him behind bars, and they kidnap her daughter and holding her hostage, and she's trying to find her, and they go to this mental institution where the one survivor, Father Silence, is being kept there. And I think he killed someone too, and that's why he's there. Anyway, so they go to him because they believe that he's the one key to helping them find their daughter. So her and her ex-husband are looking for her. And I really like this book because it felt like a very long... Okay, never mind. Oh, that was frustrating. I want to talk more about this book, but I can't. Okay, whatever. Moving on, smiling through the pain. Next up on our list, we have a book called Psalm by the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. Okay, that was a really easy name. I don't know why I couldn't remember it. And the timer. So this book is about a T-Monk named Dex, who's kind of, you know, listless in his life. He doesn't really know what he wants out of life, but he knows that he wants to have purpose, right? He wants to find something that he could be passionate about, and he's just a T-Monk because he thought that's what he wanted, but then he realized he's really bad at it. So then he goes off into the woods to find this one monastery of T-Monks, I believe. And there he meets a robot. So this book takes place in a world in which robots were created to help humans and to work for them and basically be in servitude to them. But then one day they just decided that they just didn't want to do that anymore, and they just left and went into the woods to, you know, be a part of nature. And they just abandoned the human race. And then Dex finds one of these robots, and it's a really interesting relationship because as Dex is struggling with the insecurity of not having any purpose in his life or knowing what to do with himself, this is getting harder and harder, you guys. I don't know if you can see that I'm struggling with this, but oh my gosh, that was tough. Well, the good news is we're almost done, so that's always nice. So next up on our list, we have The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins, and let me set my timer real quick. Okay, there we go. All right. So this book follows the character Rachel, and Rachel is really down on her luck right now. She just went through a very turbulent divorce. She is a raging alcoholic who lost her job, but she's still taking the train to and from where she usually used to work because she just kind of is in that denial state. And while she's on the train, she is watching the neighbors of her old house, so the neighbors who are next to her husband. So this couple that she is watching, she kind of makes a story for them, and she's noticing that the wife is cheating on the husband, and then all of a sudden she mysteriously goes missing. So she's trying to discover what's going on and if what she's seeing is actually real, because again, it's kind of like the unreliable narrator trope. Because she's an alcoholic, she has a history of just being very unreliable. So I'm so sorry, I got distracted by the snowplow again. Next up, we have Call Me By Your Name by Andre Aciman? I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Hopefully one of those was correct. So this book follows the two main characters, Elio and Oliver. And Elio lives in Italy, which is amazing, so jealous. And Oliver is this graduate assistant to his father. So they kind of strike up this begrudging friendship because Elio doesn't really like him, / he's secretly harboring feelings towards Oliver that he doesn't really understand. So he's just kind of acting out in a way in which it looks like he doesn't really like Oliver, but really he does. And Oliver is a lot older than Elio. Elio is like a 17-year-old, and Oliver is like a man in his 30s, and he's kind of engaged / promised to someone back in the States. But they strike up this relationship that's super intimate, and they just kind of lose themselves in that relationship a lot. And I really liked Andre's writing style here. I thought it was really interesting. But I feel like there are a couple of things in the book that kind of bugged me, like the age gap, which is why I did give it a higher rating. That's what I was trying to say. Okay, up next we have another romance novel, and that is The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. And the timer before I forget, this book is about our main character named, Natasha. And Natasha is a immigrant from Jamaica, and she's been in the US since she was 8, and because of her father's DUI, they basically are being deported back to Jamaica. So this story is about her trying to fight for her right to stay in America, and as she's doing that, she meets this guy named Daniel, who's also interviewing for this lawyer firm in the same building. And as they meet, they strike up this little relationship, and they begin to fall in love, and they go out in New York and they try to live the best last day in America they possibly can. And yeah, it's a really sweet book, and I really enjoyed it, and it made me really sad with the situation that Natasha was in. I don't really think it's fair that her father's mistake affected her life in the way that it did, but the ending was still a very happy ending without spoiling anything. Yeah. Okay, that was a little bit easier. Sorry, the sun's coming in at a weird angle right now. Gosh. Everything is working against me in this video. First we had the snowplow, then we have my timer, then we have the sun. Things perfectly within my control. Alright guys, we're getting down to the final few And next up we're going to be talking about a book that I think is really important for any writer to have in their arsenal, and that is Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. Alright, starting the timer. So this book, again, like I said before, it's really good for anyone who is an aspiring author or writer or anyone who just likes to write for fun. And this is a really good tool because it provides you with a blueprint, so 15 different beats or sections of a story that every single book needs to follow in order to be a cohesive tale. And then this also dives in and explores this blueprint with actual like books and movies, so that way you can see that it actually does work. And I really like this because even for me, as someone who's been writing since I was like 11 years old, it still is nice to like go through this and like check off all the boxes to see if your book has this. And again, it doesn't need to be super cut and dry. There are some things that are pretty flexible within a story, but for the most part I think this is super helpful. And I really wish as a creative writing teacher I was able to get my hands on this earlier. It's fine. I'm over it, but it's fine. Next up on our list we have Legendary by Stephanie Garber. And starting the timer. And this book is the sequel to Caraval, and Caraval is this book that is about this girl named Scarlet, and Scarlet goes to Caraval in order to try to find her sister Donatella, and she has to win the game of Caraval. And it's very Alice in Wonderland-esque kind of feel, because the whole time there's like magic, it's really flowery, there's like a lot of really great descriptors that I really enjoy. And this book I feel like really transcends the first one, because in this one we follow Donatella, who is bound to help out Jax, who is a fate from her other series, the Curse for True Love series. And in here he tells her that she needs to find out who the real Legend is, and Legend is the ruler of Caraval. And I feel like this book was a lot more interesting than the first one, because now that we've immersed ourselves in the world of Caraval and we're kind of used to it, it's kind of interesting to see it through Donatella's eyes. Even if it is a little bit repetitive, I really like this and I really like the concept. Alright guys, we made it to the end. Last but certainly not least, we have The Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. I know, that's a very long name. Alright, starting the timer. So this is a multi-generational time traveling book. So it follows 3 different characters in 3 different centuries. The first one, I believe, I can't remember his name at the top of my head, but he's basically banished to go to Canada from England because he made some atheistic statement, and at that time, as many of you know, it was a very religious state, so he was basically cast out because of his personal beliefs. And then he was taken to this place where there's this like time and space anomaly, and he can't really describe what he's seeing, but what he's actually seeing is an airport. And back then, you know, airports didn't really exist in the 18th century. And he sees this anomaly, and then like 300 to 500 years in the future, there's this writer who's going on her book tour, and she's trying to write a book about the pandemic, but then she also experiences this anomaly. And there's also a time traveling detective that's even further in the future who's sent back, and he's trying to, oh well. Anyway, I guess we'll never find out the rest of it now. Okay guys, that was a really fun challenge and kind of funny for me. I don't know if it was funny for you guys to watch me struggle, but I feel really accomplished. I feel like I was able to get as many thoughts as I could out in 1 minute. It was kind of a struggle, especially a couple times where I had to like catch my breath, or I forgot a character name or author's name. That was a lot, but I definitely liked it. I will be continuing to do this trend. Definitely let me know down in the comments if there are any books that you would like more of a deep dive into, or any books that really piqued your interest that you would like for me to talk more about than 1 minute. I am open to suggestions. I would love to hear what you guys are interested in. Don't forget to leave a red heart for love in the comments if you made it all the way to the end of this video. And let me know what are your favorite books of this year and any books you're really excited to read in 2025. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and want to see more like this one. And of course, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you can get more notifications of my videos that are coming out. I'm really excited, guys. I have a lot of really fun ideas for videos coming out soon, so make sure you keep your notifications on, and have a great rest of your day, and don't forget, keep reading.